simply TVR. This is the final episode before we put the body back onto the car. So really what this episode is hoping to capture is everything that we've got on the car that you can see prior to putting the body back onto the car. We're just going to run through everything that's been fitted, and that should be about it, and also some of the changes that we've made inside the engine bay area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the GoPro up and then run round the car. So what we've done is starting at the front. So we talked in the previous episode about the steering rack, and obviously there was that tool down there that produced to help take it apart. So I've rebuilt that with all seals. I've changed the Chimaera Griffith power steering arrangement and ditched the copper tubes that would normally be sat between the manifold and the two ports either side of the piston for some flexible stainless steel braided hoses. Hopefully that might make fitting things around it a bit simpler, and if I need to take it out at all ever again, then possibly a bit easier. So I rebuilt that. The chassis been thermally aluminium sprayed, but we've talked about that previously, by a company called Bore Coatings. Made replacement polyurethane bushes at the front because Powerflex wouldn't sell me replacement polyurethane parts only, so I turned my own bushes out of this material here. There's a few splashings of paint where they've been lying around in the garage. I don't need this part anymore, so they're effectively surplus now. The engine has come back from the engine builder, a V8 Developments. So what we've had done is we've had stage 3 cylinder heads built. I think they're called Warrior cylinder heads. These the inlet manifold has been ported out to 45mm as opposed to the standard 38. To work with that, I've had my trumpet base modified. So we've got these here, these are 45mm trumpets. I've decided to go for a P38 plenum rather than the original TVR one that was fitted, simply because it's got more room there, but also the stepper motor, rather than having the tube that fits between there and that side there, it just fits neatly onto this hole here. And what I'm going to do is to work with my supercharger installation, I'm going to plug some of these holes that aren't necessary, and I think it's just a neater one to use. So I ground off all of the Land Rover mould, well, the casting on the top, and I'm going to get a stainless steel plate that will be laser cut with SC400 or TVR or something. I haven't designed that yet, but that will then sit on the top to finish that off. And then I've also had this larger plenum butterfly valve fitted inside as well. So that's the the top end. So we had larger valve cylinder heads fitted, different inlet manifold. I sent the alternator away to somewhere in Reading that does alternators and starter motors. So this is the original Magneti Morelli. It's all come back with new bearings and overhauled. Had a new water pump fitted. The bottom end, you come round, the bottom end has been cross bolted, so you can just about see, possibly, I'm not sure if the camera will pick that up, but there's cross bolts on the block, and then it's been fitted with top hat liners and the rotating assembly and con rods all balanced for weight and rotation. The starter motor, that was sent away with the alternator for a full overhaul. I didn't really want to buy a cheap starter motor off of eBay. This is the original Land Rover one, so I've had that fully overhauled. What else? The engine. So what I did is, because we were running forced induction, I had thought quite long and hard as to what camshaft we wanted fitted. So I've gone for a Kent cam, an H214, but what they've done is they've moved the lobe centres out to 114 degrees on a normal aspirated or naturally aspirated car. Then that lobe separation would normally be around about 110 degrees. So they've moved those further apart, and the reason for that is that on forced induction engines there are times in the cycle when both the exhaust valve and the inlet valve are open at the same time. So by moving the lobe separation further apart, you're reducing the duration during the engine cycle when both valves are open, and you're effectively pumping the compressed air that you've done the work on out through the exhaust port. Well, that's generally the way of thinking anyway for forced induction. So I've also fitted a new clutch slave cylinder. You can just see just down there from Powers Performance they supplied that. So moving back round here, gearbox that was rebuilt by John Reed at Grand Tour Engineering. What he did was he put a different tail housing on the back. I think this is called an S10. I did mention that previously. What that did mean was that the pickup point for the gearbox normally sits here onto the gearbox tail housing. Casting doesn't exist. What it does, it picks up there. So what I had to do, and it also sits lower as well, so what I had to do was I had to fabricate this plate from 6mm plate. I bought some replacement bobbin type bushes or mounts, rubber mounts. The original ones are I think 35mm high, these ones are 15, so that dropped that height of that plate down. And then I utilised, there's a hole that goes through the tail housing of the gearbox similar to the one at the top, which you can just see there, and I actually utilised one of the old suspension bolts. The one that goes, the long one that goes here, is actually a perfect fit to go through there, and it's just the right length. So I fabricated up a couple of plates and welded these on, and then they've all then been Por 15'd, coated in Por 15 paint, and that then seems to sit the gearbox at about the right height. And what I didn't do when I did all of this, took it apart, is I didn't measure the gap through there, so I had a reference height. A friend of mine gave me a reference measurement there, so basically I've sized all this up to effectively try and get the right height. But if I've got any problems, what I can do is I bought some taller bobbins that I can replace these with to raise it up a bit if necessary. I don't think it'll need to sit any lower than that. What that does is that it then does away with the linkage that would normally sit or hinge from this point here to the back of the gearbox, which used to be here, and then you then had another piece that then put the gear stick in that place. So this now comes out more or less in the right place. I think when we put the body on, it needs to come out over slightly to the side, either possibly forwards or backwards. But what it means is I can make a simple piece. Where's it gone? I think it's hiding somewhere. Simple piece basically to bring that gear stick, which I shall reuse from earlier, back into the right place. So moving round then, John also had the prop shaft rebuilt with new universal joints, and it's been rebalanced. You can see one of the tags there, balancing tags there. Obviously new bolts to put it back onto the diff. John rebuilt the diff with a 308 crown and pinion combination, basically to reduce the ratio, because I didn't need it to be that high, and with all the modifications and things to the engine, I've got the power and torque to more than compensate for that change in ratio. And then what I did, I had some replacement drive shafts made. So these were made from Beresford in the correct steel, similar to some that you can get elsewhere. All of this pipe work, brake pipe work, is all new. I've produced all of that, bent it all. New, the handbrake cable's new. The brake calipers, they were refurbished about a year ago by Big Red for me, so they've just been wiped over with a cloth and been put back on. The rear suspension bushes, standard bushes, I decided to fit standard bushes. I've got a press so I can put them in, so they've all gone in. I've fitted thrust nylon washers. Because of the tolerancing on the chassis, I found that the gaps weren't particularly even, so some washers are thicker than others. Some washers I've actually, if you look manufactured myself, they're in a different material, different colour material. They're all nylon but different colour to the ones that are provided from the supplier. The bushes that hold the diff on, Power Flex, these polyurethane ones. Tim Lamont ACT Products provided me with those. And then that's pretty much it. We've got a new fuel filter that's sat there, and all the pipe work's been put in. The universal joints are all, sorry, the CV joints rather for the drive shafts are all new, so they've gone together okay. The engine mounts, they were originally from SC Power, a bit of an upgrade from the normal rubber ones. I think they're polyurethane. That's pretty much it. The front, I did have a bit of fun trying to fit this this bar back in, because it's been painted. The gap there was quite tight, so a bit of challenge to try and get in there. The ball joints top and bottom have been replaced for new items, so have the track rod ends, and the calipers have just been refitted. These are Monster high spec 6-pot calipers, which are more than adequate to stop this beastie when it finally goes back onto the road. So the only thing left to do now on here before putting the body back on is to sort this copper pipe out, bend it. I'm going to put the fluids in the gearbox. I'm going to put the fluids in the diff, because obviously it's a lot easier to do with the body off, because I can just reach there and fill that without any problem, and similarly on the diff. And also I want to tighten up these suspension bolts, particularly the ones on the back. Once it's down on wheels, then I can get someone heavy to sit on it to more or less have them sat at the proper ride height. And that's pretty much it. So if we go round to the engine bay area, been quite busy in here. So I used basically a bed liner paint called Cobra, which you mix in a hardener to the tin, and then I then applied it with a decorating sponge roller rather than spray. So I did all of the engine bay in that. I cleaned it all up, and then I fitted these new heat shields. You can see the ones on the bulkhead there, and then if I turn around this and I try and move my ugly mug shot out of the field of view, got a new one on this side as well. And they came from the Chimaera Pages guy. They come with stainless steel pop rivets, so they've gone in a treat. I had to do a bit of repair work on this hole because the fixing positions of this this cover had actually, where they corresponded through onto there, were too close to the edge and cracked the fiberglass, so I'd repaired all of that. The other things that I've done are I've cleaned all of this area. There was a significant amount of damage. I'll try and up in this area here. This is all delaminated along here, and it was never actually laminated or fixed properly from the mould all the way along here. So I dug all of that out and I re-fiberglassed all of that before then filling it up. There was also a crack that ran around here as well, and that's all been strengthened with fiberglass matting around the front, and then that crack's then being ground out, and then it's then being filled to give me back the strength that it presumably left the factory with. And also one of the other things is this nut here, or this bush that's put into the fiberglass here. This had actually all cracked. It was too close to the edge. If you look, for some reason there's a step in the shell where it comes down there, and that then fitted very close to the top of that bush, and it was all cracked and was able to move. So that's all been strengthened and rebonded. And then this intercooler has been refitted. Had a few fun and games with the windscreen wiper washer bottle. The bracket had seemed to rust weld itself onto the back of the bottle, so that bracket's all been removed and painted and then refitted, and then stainless steel screws hold that in. And that is pretty much it really. As I said, we've got a couple of jobs to do prior to fitting the body back on, but that is pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again once we've got the body back on. Thank you.